Hello, everybody. This is State Representative Roger Bruce, and I want to welcome everybody to our weekly edition of Under the Gold Dome. As you know, this was the first week of the 2017 session of the General Assembly. A lot of things this week were primarily ceremonial type things. However, we have hit the ground running. And we've got several bills that we need to talk about. With us today is my good friend and colleague, and I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves, but Howard and I have been here for a while. But why don't we just go around the room, introduce yourselves, and then we'll talk about what we have to talk about real quick.
Hi, Jason Gathing.
Pass the mic.
Sharon Matthews.
Okay.
Andre Fields.
And that is the staff that will be working with me, along with some others who are not seated here, that will be working with me in this session to make sure that we serve all of the people in the state of Georgia by getting the legislation passed that we need to and getting those things that we need to defeated. Howard, why don't we let you introduce yourself too in the district that you serve?
All right, I am State Representative Howard Mosby. I represent the 83rd House District, which is in DeKalb County, the greatest county in the state.
Behind the ones I represent, but go ahead.
Let's see, Roger and I have been elected since 2002, before some of you all were born.
Yeah.
And we been at this for a while, but it is indeed my honor to sit here and serve and work with my colleague here to my left.
Okay, so with that, why don't we just jump right into it? There's several pieces of legislation that I'm going to be working on, and I know Howard has a few that he'd like to highlight too. And but one of the bills we'll deal with is House Bill. We pre-filed it, so it's House Bill 21, which primarily focuses on creating a department within the government that will allow that department will basically look at government spending, state government spending, and see where there are discrepancies in terms of how we allocate contracts to minority businesses, women-owned businesses, small businesses, to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to participate. And Jason, your role at this particular point is to go around and make sure that we get people to sign on to this legislation. Talk about what's happened this week in terms of you trying to
they're looking
get
at discrepancies in
people
who is and who is not receiving the funding for these contracts. So it's a great thing. People love to hear about it. It's going to do amazing things for the community, at least once it's enacted. My job, basically, I'm going around, I'm talking to legislators everywhere, getting these signatures to try to get this thing passed.
And this, how are you coming along in terms of it being bipartisan? Because clearly that's what we want. We want everybody to be able to participate. What are you getting in terms of the Democrats and the Republicans? How are they reacting to it?
I think actually it's really a positive thing. You know, everybody's kind of sketchy until they read about it a little bit more and understand what exactly that we're trying to establish here or get done. Okay. Republicans and Democrats both. They both like it, and they're signing on for it.
Okay, good. Why don't we skip over to Andre for a minute, because we pre-filed two bills. And the other bill deals with voting and making sure that we make it as easy as possible for people to vote. And so why don't you talk about House Bill 22?
Okay, so House Bill 22 is the Any Precinct Act. Basically, what it would allow for the early voting rules to be extended to Election Day. We want to make it easier for people to vote in the state of Georgia, and I feel like this bill is really going to allow people to do that. Being able to vote at any precinct in your designated county would be helpful to people, people who may be working on one side of the county and maybe, living on another part and might not have time to get back to their designated area by the time the polls close at 7 o'clock here. Why not give them the opportunity to vote any place in their county by giving ballot access?
And what kind of reaction are you getting as you're going around getting signatures?
Well, the Democrats are ecstatic about it, as expected. Republicans have some questions. there have been a few who
What kind of questions?
more so about voter fraud and things of that nature. They think that it's probably an advantage, but the way I've been framing it and trying to explain it to them is that this is a win for everybody. You know, even if you're in a safe district, as I spoke to one Republican the other day, he tried to mention voter fraud, but once I framed it in a way that would allow him to understand that this is helping not one side or the other,
Right.
but all people, he warmed up to the idea.
The fact that we added to that legislation on the end of it, we added to it that the counties could not implement it until it was approved by the university, what's the college?
Kennesaw
State
State, yes.
University, that they would have to look at it because they're the ones that pretty much monitor our current election rules. And so once they verify that the county's got everything set up, then the county can go ahead and do it. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
I think that part, and also the buy-in aspect as well about counties not being mandated to do
Right,
this.
they could do it as they are prepared
Right.
to move on with it. Okay, great. So that's two. Now, I know we started down one path of trying to get a piece of legislation through, and then we found out that, you know, when we went to talk to the Legislative Council about it, that a lot of the things that we wanted to do are actually in some other law already.
Right.
And but some of the district attorneys across the state are just not using the laws that we have. So part of our responsibility now, I guess, is to educate the DAs in some part that these laws exist. But there are some that don't exist. And I know that you and Paul Howard have been talking about some of those things. Why don't you just real briefly talk about that?
Okay, so mostly what we're trying to establish is some way that we can keep repeat juvenile offenders and most of them are, when I say repeat, we're talking 30 or more arrests in and out of the system. We're trying to set up a system where we can actually have a council, certain judges who only lean to those certain cases. So we can establish, are they to a point where they can be helped, or is it a point to where we need to go ahead and move them up to adult, you know, superior court type status,
Okay.
instead of kind of flushing them in and out the system to come right back in.
Some way to make sure that we're protecting our constituencies against continual predators, regardless of their age.
Right.
And
And at the same time, we're kind of helping the juveniles as well. Some of them can, you know, we can save, and then
Right.
some of them we might have to.
yeah,
you know?
I think our first priority is to try to find out why these young people are committing these crimes.
Right.
And then once we figure out, you know, why they're committing and address those issues that are causing them to do it in the first place. There are some instances where some of them just doing it because they want to do it.
Right. Exactly.
And so we need to deal with all of them. But I'm glad to see all of you, you know, are excited about the bills that you're working with me on. I'm excited about having you do it, and
Thank you.
we'll talk about it some more. But right now, Brother Howard, I know that you have some things going on in your area too that you want to talk about, so why don't we just turn it over to you?
Well, I actually wanted to talk about this stuff here.
Okay, well, go ahead.
Because actually what I was, so I hadn't pre-filed the bill, or dropped the bill yet. Back to the juvenile repeat offender deal. I'm actually more concerned about the fact that the parents of the children, whether they're actively involved with the child or not, escapes the wrath, if you will, of the punishment that the child's experiencing. In some kind of way, we need to be able to tie back to that parent that child's activity on the parent. And if we can get those two connected, I think that we can probably make some inroads on somebody else being responsible other than this child.
That's one of the things that we initially were talking about, because the initial bill basically said, you know, because we have all these adults that are out recruiting children to commit these crimes because of this point system. Do you have the same point system in DeKalb County? I know it's county by county. Do you have that out there?
I don't know.
Yeah, well, they got this point system here in Fulton where they've applied a point number to certain crimes. And if the child is arrested and they have not maxed out the number of points, then they release them, which is kind of crazy.
Right.
And what has happened now is that adults have figured out this point system. And they go out and they recruit the children, and they recruit them and say, well, you only have 5 points, so if you commit this crime, you'll only get 2 more, and they'll let you go. And then they tell the child, we'll give you $100, you go commit this crime. And so the original bill that we had basically said something similar to what you're talking about, which was if an adult can be proven to be complicit in a child committing a crime, and the child does not have enough points to do the time, then the adult that was complicit would do the time. And but they're saying that there's pieces in other laws that can do that now if applied. I guess
they're talking about
yeah.
the contributing to a delinquency of a minor, which is, that's a law, but at the same time, it doesn't kind of wrap around the same thing. That can be, I gave you a child a bottle of wine. That would be contributing to the delinquency of a minor. I could have said, hey, there's a car over there, open that car door. But we're talking about people who literally go out and prey upon young kids who have no idea half of the consequences they're going to deal with, just so that adult can be able to get what they need from it and walk away scot-free. So D.A. Howard also has something like that in his recommendations, where he wants like a community panel. Instead of just legislatives and people who are in the system working, maybe people in the community, and sit down and talk about how we can get them either to steer in the right direction or to stand up and say we won't do it anymore, or we're not going to take it anymore, not in our community.
Well, I guess, again, for me, it would be more of going after the parent.
Right.
So I don't know about these adults
how would you apply that?
That child has a parent, they have a birth certificate, you know who that is, they get a charge. If your charge is misdemeanor, parent gets the misdemeanor charge too.
Wow.
Right.
And so that way, that parent has to say, I don't want this on me. Now, if the parent is in the system, let's say that they're in jail too, then they get more time on them. But some kind of way that somebody else has to have some responsibility that this child. So let's say we exempt the first one. So the child does something stupid, and we'll call it stupid this time, and they get in the system, and they get out. That second time, it's going to be on somebody else too. If they're under the age of, and you have to pick the age, whether or not it's 17, 16, but somebody else has to face some wrath in addition to that child. Also, if you need to look at the juvenile justice system, because there are some problems in that too. These kids have access to Xbox. They don't have to do anything. They attend these classes. They're very violent toward the caseworkers. And so they're in the system, but I don't think that there's any correction that's going on in the system. So I think that it's a holistic approach that we need to look at this process.
Okay.
The question.
Yeah.
In a sense of doling out justice to the parents, and what happens to the child if you're giving that parent the time and whatnot, and now
they're in there too. The child's in
so
there.
the
Everybody's
child's
serving.
in there.
Everybody. This if prison life is what y'all want as a family, then that's what you're gonna get. But somebody needs to say, I want. I need to know what my child is doing at all times. There are parents out there that say, I don't know that my child is doing X, Y, Z, and them the worst ones to me, because. And Roger, I know, because we raise children, it is your responsibility to know what your children do at all times. And for you to back away to say, it's not my responsibility, they did this and I didn't know they were going to do it, then your job is to ensure that they don't do it and start holding these folk accountable.
I totally agree with parents. They do need to be held accountable for their actions. Like you said, they do need to know where their kids are, their cell phones, things like that. But also, parenting is not an easy task. Are you proposing maybe some programs that they need to have out there to help parents better, assist their children in rearing them in specific things that they do?
Well, let me kind of hold off on that, because probably this could be a whole topic for, this could be a topic for a whole show, and maybe, we do that and we just talk about that. But I want to make sure, because this is our first one, that we, just kind of, throw out what's going to be happening through this session. Some of the things that we already know about. The governor gave his State of the Union this week.
State of State.
The State of the State, excuse me. And he also talked about budget. One of the things that I saw in that budget process was that he was not really going to give the teachers, in my opinion, an adequate increase. It was 2%. And 2% is not a lot if you consider what our teachers have to go through. What were some of the other things that you might want to talk about?
What the governor talked about?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of the standard stuff. The point on the education system, I think that we are, as a state, are focusing in on the teachers and looking at the curriculum. But I do believe that a big part or problem with our educational system starts at the college level. And a lot of the test scores are geared toward what colleges and universities are asking for. And people are pushing the public schools so that those scores make it such that the kids can get into those great universities.
Yeah.
Nobody's talking about the fact that a lot of these kids may not be going, and how we are preparing them to just be productive citizens in our society. What test score gets us that?
Yeah, and I think, for me, the difficulty, and I don't know, you guys have, some of you have kids, but, we're in a situation where we see an attack on the public school system. And that there's this drive to privatize everything, private schools, and even down to the point of private prisons. And which scares the daylights out of me. When you have a private prison, in order for that prison to be successful, you have to have prisoners. And what better way to guarantee that you have prisoners than to limit who gets an education? If you don't have an education, you're going to end up in the prison system, most likely. So all of that, looking at everything combined, is what's scary to me. We don't have that much time left. Let's go real quick. If you guys have anything else that you'd like to say, the next version of Under the Gold Dome will be longer, and we'll be able to talk in more depth about things, but, we're trying to just get the ball rolling. So real quick, talk about whatever it is that you feel that you need to say relative to the bill that you're working on.
Just closing thoughts for me is you guys out there, just check out HB 21. It's an excellent bill. It's going to put a lot more growth in multiple communities, rural areas, and it's just going to give other people an opportunity to just grow and receive contracts, to be able to help their families and so on and so forth.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to be working very hard. I can tell by now. Just beginning to build this bill and having to talk to District Attorney Howard and just kind of get a consensus of how everybody else feels about it. But honestly, this is probably going to be the most important thing I've done, probably this whole session. So I'm looking forward to it, and I can't wait to bring back whatever information I have next time.
All right.
With the attack that's going on voting rights across the country right now, I'm working really hard on this bill because we want to show people that Georgia is a state that is leading in the fight to protect people's right to vote and expand voting rights instead of denying them or taking them away.
So tell them one more time, what's the bill number?
HB 22.
HB 22. All right. Howard?
Bruce will produce again. And so I'm working with Roger, so whatever we need to do to make things happen, to make the state better.
Yeah, we're gonna be doing a lot of things. Again, I want to thank you, Howard. I hope you're gonna come back again,
Yes.
and sit around. Maybe we take that one subject and make it the topic. And I know there are great things going on in DeKalb County too. I tease them about that being the fourth best. I represent 3, so his is the 4th. But in all candor, he's doing a great job. He's the chairman of the delegation for DeKalb County. I chair the delegation for Douglas County. I also represent parts of Fulton County and parts of Cobb County. And so, again, I appreciate everybody coming out, participating in this version of Under the Gold Dome. And we look forward to next week where we'll have some bills will have already been dropped, and we'll have more to talk about, and we'll give an update on where we are. I would be remiss if I did not say thank you to everybody that's looking at this that voted to allow us to have our own city in South Fulton. The referendum passed. It was a very successful referendum. I think we got 60, it was a 60-40 vote. And now we're in the process of establishing, the mayor's office, the city council's office. The elections will be March the 20th, and the mayor and city council will take office on the 1st of May. And we'll talk about that more as we go forward as well. So thanks again for joining us for this week's version of Under the Gold Dome.